Okay, hi guys. I hope all of you are doing good. I'm doing good myself. I just wanted us to go through the coagulation cascade. I hate these parts of medicine that you have to memorize, like a list that you have to memorize. So I always try to make it easier for to gather that list. So now we're going to look at the coagulation cascade. I'm sure you guys already know by this time that what the coagulation cascade is for. It's basically just to create a clot. Now we have a lot of factors that take part in this formation of a clot. Or cross-linked clot, as we can call it more specifically, and there are actually 12 factors, but they're numbered from 1 to 13, and that's because factor 6 does not exist. So that's a rhyme you can use as well. Factor 6 does not exist. So we'll go through them in a while, or roundabout just now, and yeah, we'll find a way to memorize them. So first of all, let me just excuse my camera and positioning. I'm literally holding my camera from above and trying to write at the same time because yeah, situation calls for it. So just don't mind like too much if I'm moving a lot. It's a bit difficult. So okay, let's start with our factors. Like I said, we have 12 factors. They are numbered 1 to 13. So, and factor 6 does not exist, so we'll number them as follows. Factor 1, factor 2, factor 3, 4, 5, factor 6 does not exist, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 13. Great. So now we have our factors. Now we have to name our factors. They actually have names. And this is like a tricky thing to do or to remember, but we'll make it quite simple. For now, I'll just list to you the original names so that you guys know what exactly they are. Mind my notes. So we have factor 1, which is fibrinogen. Factor 2 is prothrombin. Factor 3 is tissue, thromboplastin. Factor. Yeah, tissue thromboplastin factor. Okay, you guys can still see. Factor 4 is calcium ions. Factor 5 is Labelle factor. Factor 6 is stable factor. I like to remember these two. Factor 7, there's no factor 6. Factor 7 is stable factor. Factor 8 is antihemophilic factor. Antihemophilic factor. Factor 9 is Christmas factor. Factor 10 is Stewart-Prower factor. Okay, you guys can still see, that's good. And factor 11 is plasma thromboplastin antecedent. Plasma thromboplastin antecedent. It's not an accident that this name is here. It actually is what it's called. Oh, I was wondering what's that. That's my arm in the green. Okay, let's not get distracted. But plasma thromboplastin antecedent factor is actually supposed to be there. It's not an accident. Antecedent. So Factor 12 is Hagerman factor. I like this because it reminds me of Huggies. And then factor 13 is fibrin stabilizing factor. Now, after you've like seen all these factor names, you probably like, oh my God, like how am I supposed to remember all 13 of these very different names? Well, this is where I fall in, okay? I try to make a little thing to help us remember, but it comes with the story, so you have to, if you like stories, this one's for you. So we're going to create a story that's going to help us remember our factors, and it goes as follows. I'll first have you listen to it. So Fibrina, the professional thrower, had tissue thrown at her with calcium. Sometimes she was weak, sometimes she was strong, but anti-human people kept on going, or kept on throwing at her. Luckily, Father Christmas, whose name is Stuart Prower, came with a plasma TV and stood in front of people throwing at her so it could stop. So it could stop the tissues from going anterograde. He then gave her a hug and she was finally stable again. So I'll say it again because I was kind of like, stuttering or whatever. I'll read it again just so that you can make sense out of it, or you can picture it so it's easy to remember. So Fibrina, the professional thrower, had tissue thrown at her with calcium. Sometimes she was weak, sometimes she was strong, but anti-human people kept going on. Luckily, Father Christmas, Stuart Prower, came with a plasma TV and stood in front of the people throwing so it could stop it from going anterograde. He then gave her a hug and then she was finally stable again. Kind of a sweet story. Do not ask me how I came up with this, guys. Like, that's just how my mind works. So, whatever gets the job done, let's do it. Okay, so I'll write the story kind of next to these factors so that you understand what goes where. Okay, so Fibrina the professional thrower had tissues thrown at her with calcium. Sometimes she was weak. Sometimes she was strong. But anti-human people kept going on. Luckily, Father Christmas whose name was Stuart Prower, came with a plasma TV stood in front of the people the people throwing so that it wouldn't go anterograde. So that, okay, let's change it. So that there wouldn't be an accident. He then gave her a hug and she was finally stable again. Okay guys, so that is the story, and I'm sure by now you kind of have, you can quickly pause and write it down while I hold this still. But then if you can, some of you already picked up like where we get the tricks from, right? So I'm gonna go through with you again. So fibrina should remind you of fibrinogen. So, and pro in professional and thrower should remind you of prothrombin. Every time you see a thrower, think of thrombin. Okay, guys? Every time you see thrower in this story, think of thrombin. Okay. Tissue thrown is tissue thromboplastin. Calcium, with calcium is obviously calcium. Labile is weak. Stable is strong. But anti-human people, anti-hemophilic factor kept going on. Luckily, Father Christmas is the next factor, whose name is Stuart Power. Next factor as well came with a plasma TV and stood in front of the people throwing so that there wouldn't be an accident. Plasma thromboplastin antecedent. And then he gave a hug. I don't think you can see this one. Yes. A hug, which is Hagerman factor, and she was finally stable again. Fibrin stabilizing factor. So there you go again, just to have a, you can screenshot that or rewrite it, pause it and rewrite that. So yeah, so that's how you remember the factor names. Now a lot of times they also ask us like what factors are vitamin dependent, and that's quite easy to remember because 2 plus 7 will give you what? 9 and not 10. These are your vitamin K dependent factors. Okay, so that will be prothrombin will be your vitamin K dependent factor. Then factor 7, which is stable factor will be a vitamin K dependent factor. Then Christmas factor will be a vitamin dependent factor, and then Stuart Power factor will be a vitamin K dependent factor. So yes, in the next video, I will be talking about the coagulation cascade and how these factors play their roles within the cascade. Thanks for watching. Oh, one last thing before I close off, like just remember that all these factors, right, are usually in the blood or wherever, in their inactive form. So whenever they get active, they are called a different name or actually a different number. For example, if fibrinogen which is factor 1, becomes active, it will be known as 1A. But it has like specific names as well. So if fibrinid 1A is also known as fibrin, which is still easy to remember. And then prothrombin, if that becomes activated, let's just do this. If that becomes activated, will become thrombin, which is 2A, right? Thrombin. Yeah, so it goes on like that, but not all of them have names that you need to remember. These are basically the 2 active ones that whose names you need to remember, okay? All right, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this helped. See you in the next video.